Kia ora, race fans, and welcome to another edition of Weigh-In. Not only the fastest on four legs from Australia, but a tried and trusted old Kiwi stayer gets the job done for us. That's coming up on the program. The future of New Zealand's racing game, according to the NZRB, perhaps. And we have a late rider change. Bruce Sherwin is away, so we've got one of our finest former jockeys joining the Weigh-In panel this morning. Hayden Tinsley, how's the real food and daylight saving treating you, mate?
Oh, I've never been the same. It's been very, very good. But,
so what would you be walking at?
Oh, I'm at the high end of 60s. I haven't hit 70 yet, but I'm enjoying my life at the moment. Great.
Because jockeys, a lot of them tend to sort of blow up a wee bit after they give it up. And you've been away, you were saying, for 12 months today or yesterday?
Yesterday was the last day at New Plymouth that I rode race day and also rode a horse. So, yeah, it's been exactly 12 months of the day this weekend that I haven't ridden on one.
I guess, do you think he misses it? Doesn't look like he misses it much, Mick.
We don't won't miss the starving, will you? Talk about walking close to 70. Opie Bosson got to 71 about a couple of months ago, and he's riding next week at Livermore Day. So how hard is it to lose 10?
You're suggesting a comeback.
But how does it make you grumpy when you have to lose that level of weight? Hey?
Well, 10 kilos on a 70 kilo body is over 10% of your body weight. So if you look at it that way, it is a lot. I know what Opie would be going through, so if he's got his weight down good enough to be riding next week, I congratulate him.
Shelby, we're going to talk today also about, not just about the great Southern victory yesterday in the Metrop, of course, with the South rising again in Sydney, but
and we're going to talk about how good looking you are this morning, because not only have you got an interesting tan with the holiday coming up, we also have a problem with the old
we've got a slight light problem, so if you've got some candles, can you send them into Trackside? We are going to talk more seriously about jockeys, though, because two of our leading female jockeys, Maya Vance and Sarah McNabb, are hospitalised as we speak, and we'll talk more about some of the dangers of being a jockey and ask Aidan about those and what happens when you do get injured. So, yeah, it's always a sad time, but we have some hard news coming out first with co-leading trainer of the country, Andrew Forsman, about to join us.
Yeah, the banter is sort of about to stop, I suppose, in terms of the Kiwis trying to get some spoils in the spring of Melbourne, and Andrew Forsman does join us live on the telephone. The lighting guy's probably sleeping in an hour, but good to have you on the phone live as we speak there, Andrew. How's things? You're in New Zealand? You're on this side of the Tasman?
Yeah, I'm a New Zealand guy, so all good here anyway, but yeah, no, looking forward to today at Caulfield.
Just as an opener for 10, is it just me, but we haven't obviously got into our Australian review from yesterday yet, but is the Australian form and competition just scaringly intense at the moment, this year?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's always difficult over there this time of the year. The tracks are firm and fast, and obviously never easy to compete.
Yeah, Bonneval, I suppose the first one we can have a chat about. You know, generally speaking, Murray thinks she's been a bit underwhelming this campaign so far, as we have a look at her winning this time last year, was it? Oh no, this is her race fresh up actually, when she's at the back of the field at first up in the season. What do you think, mate? Is she underwhelming?
Oh, she was first up, obviously, but it was a niggly race for her to resume, and she was off the scene for a long time. I think that's what we have to be mindful of. We're very happy with her and her track work and how she looks. Very hard to fault. I guess it's just a matter of a mare being so long off the scene, whether she's still got that zest for racing, I suppose, and I guess that's what we'll find out today, but we certainly can't fault her as far as her form on the track goes.
Andrew, she's racing in the Underwood at 7:30 tonight. Is it a case where if she didn't perform at least to first 4 or 5 level, the Connections have the option to retire her because it's still early enough to put her in foal for this season?
Yeah, that's right. There is that option. So that's something we'll have to consider after the race. But I guess there's a lot to happen between now and then. I don't think we'll look at it as far as where she finishes in the field. It's more just how she races, and we'll know pretty soon after the race and the feedback from Regan. We'll know pretty quickly whether she's back to somewhere near her best or not.
This time last year, Andrew, not just her, but most of your team and most of the Kiwis seem to be struggling on the very hard tracks in Melbourne. It would seem to be a bit of rain wouldn't go astray for most of your team and most of the New Zealand horses. Are the tracks in Melbourne now in the spring generally almost too good for our horses?
Yeah, I think, well, they're probably not too good. I guess that just a lot of horses in particular just seems to be the ones we've taken over there all do prefer a bit of fire out of the track. Obviously not all of them, but generally, the New Zealand horses are used to racing on forgiving tracks apart from probably 2 to 3 months of the year. So I guess that's how they're bred and how they're conditioned, a lot of it. And, it is easier for us to compete when they are just slowed down a little bit.
Mate, the Derby winner is back, Vin de Dance. Of course, he went to Sydney, had a campaign there, which he was very good in. He's in today with a big weight. Is it a case of he's a little bit further back than we would like him to be, looking towards races like the Caulfield Cup, and all of a sudden maybe races later in the carnival become the focus for him?
Yeah, he's a lot further behind than where we want him to be. He did have a little bit of a setback, and he's playing catch-up at the moment, so a little bit unfortunate there. We're just trying to get a line on him today, and look, as long as he goes a respectable race, we'd be wrapped, because he is on the back foot, and he's got a tough task ahead of him first up over 17 with a big weight. So really just needs to put in a good effort.
And obviously needs the miles in his legs. I was looking forward to Peaceful today, Andrew, and she's out. So what's the story there?
She got cast in her box yesterday morning, unfortunately. The girls pulled her out of the box and she was very stiff. Just got a bit of pain through her neck, so she's been treated with anti-inflammatories. Obviously, she couldn't run today, or probably any time, probably next week. So we'll just have to monitor that over the next 2 or 3 days, and hopefully it improves quickly. Those things can either sort of linger around or come right pretty quickly. So hopefully she's okay to press on with this preparation, but yeah, not a good time to have a setback for her.
Mate, your 3-year-old stayers have been your most successful version of Australian classic horses in the last couple of years. You've got 2 aiming at the Derby and the Oaks still at this stage. What's the story with Botti, who missed a start in the Derby trial, and personally, Ribera, as she heads to the Oaks after a fresh-up run last week?
Yeah, Botti, he obviously resumed in the Wanganui Guineas here and was okay, but we have thought he's a Derby horse, so he's going around over about 1,700 metres at Geelong tomorrow against the older horses, but it's just a run, sort of get a run into him, and then as those 3-year-old staying races kick in Melbourne, hopefully he can chime into them and be competitive, but we'd expect him to go well tomorrow. And obviously Ribera, she'll run in the Edward Manifold. She was just okay first up, but she hadn't raced for a long time either, and just coming off, the back of a long winter, she's probably just taken a little bit of time to find her feet over in Melbourne, but probably want to see a more improved effort next Saturday, and then we can press on to some again. We really don't want to, see her hitting her straps until she gets to 2,000 metres, and that's what we're worried about, obviously. We've took them over there to try and win a Derby and an Oaks, and we're not getting too worried about things yet.
Mate, 2 horses who we could see at Hastings. Love Affair scratched out of Avondale yesterday. I believe she could be heading there. And any chance Lizzie Lamore makes the late payment for the Livermore?
Yeah, I spoke to Lorna Moore yesterday, and we sort of decided that we will have a go with Lizzie in the Livermore. She probably is just the run behind where she needs to be, but looking at options heading forward, there's probably not a lot for her. So we've decided she'll have a couple of good gallops next week, and hopefully she draws well, and she could, on her best, on any given day, she'll always be competitive.
Andrew, thanks for joining us an hour early this morning. Sounds like you've got something to attend to there, and good luck with the rest of the day on the Spring Carnival, mate.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Andrew Forsman there joining us from New Zealand, obviously, and looking forward to hopefully a bit of success, or at least improved run from Bonnevale this afternoon in the Underwood, and of course Vin de Dance getting some legs or miles into the legs today at Caulfield as well. Okay, well, we may sort of be off the pace a little when it comes to the sprint stars, but give us a wee bit of track in front of us, and the New Zealand old, tried and trusted staying breed usually starts kicking some goals, or certainly get some traction, and that was the case yesterday in the Group 1 $750,000 Metropolitan Handicap with Patrick Aaron, the Otago wonder horse, I suppose he's going to be called now, and possibly the replacement for Chris Waller in terms of who shot the barmer, just digging up in behind them, Mick, in what was a sort of almost a predicted sort of win. He just came to this nicely, didn't he?
Well, $16 on the tote seems huge when you consider Chris was quite bullish before the race. Now, the Met Trop may not be everybody's cup of tea these days, but what a great win for White Robe Lodge and for the South, of course, named after the late owner, Patrick Aaron Smith. And we do hear a lot coming out about the big money that comes for the sales for the Australian horses, and also the big money spent in Europe trying to get stayers for races like the Melbourne Cup. But when you consider what the old New Zealand breed, and this one's by Gallant Guru, does. You have Who Shot the Barman in recent years, of course, won the Sydney Cup this year, beating Cicada, so 2 New Zealand breeds there. This horse yesterday, a couple of years ago, Prince of Penzance. Sometimes, Hayden, it's the old tough dog for the hard road, and look, this horse now is a Melbourne Cup horse. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned just then about going to Europe to find some good old tough stayers. Maybe you might get a cheaper version then down in the South Island. There's some really good tough ones down there from White Rock Lodge. Well, Gallant Guru, I mean, if you said to most people at Sydney yesterday, the breeding buffs, oh, how many Gallant Gurus have you got? They wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Well, He Shot the Barman's by Yeneman Vital, of course, and just looking at Chris Waller and his reaction after the race yesterday, he was quite chuffed, I think, about pulling off this project.
He was sent over to me from New Zealand by the owners, which firstly we're grateful of, but I could just see in him, obviously like the barman who we've had from New Zealand as well, and they're just tough horses. So I knew we had to get him up to a suitable distance. I wanted to make sure we still kept him fresh, and I'm pleased we did, because that last 600 time was amazing. So yeah, he's a horse we're proud of, and yeah, it's a pretty special win.
Well, may be around as long as the barman is.
He's got a long way to go then, hasn't he? A lot of time.
Another 10 years?
Yeah, might end up being a crowd favourite. Great for Corey Brown. He's been a great supporter of me for a long time, and doesn't get enough opportunities as he deserves from our stable, because we've got so many good riders, but very grateful that he took the ride, made the effort to ride the weight, and he's a great rider.
Well, what do you think you'll do with Patrick Erin now?
I think, I'm not sure, maybe look at something bigger. Obviously got the St Ledger here in 2 weeks, and obviously you got the Cups in Melbourne, so I think 2 miles is really going to suit him. That's when he'll really hit his peak. So I think we'll be having a good look at the first Tuesday in November and working back from that.
So I think he was 105th in the order of merit in terms of a start in the Melbourne Cup, Patrick Erin, but I guess he will have jumped up the rankings a wee bit after that $750,000 win yesterday. So from Riverton Cup success to Randwick, who'd have thought, although he was no slug in New Zealand, it must be.
No, and he got up in the weights too quickly for his own good. He ended up carrying 60 kilos in a Wellington Cup and got to the farcical stage where they had to send him overseas. And you can make what you want of those 60 kilo top weights in some of our handicaps, but not many horses seem to win when they do have to carry them. Hayden, you, obviously being a CD boy, rode a couple of horses for Chris Waller back in the day. Was there any indication back when Chris was starting out that he was going to become this sort of juggernaut?
Gee, that's a few moons ago now, but I think Chris's dedication back then when he was foreman for Paddy Bussett and Foxton, he was pretty precise and picky on what he wanted to do. And I think when he made that shift to go to Australia, he jumped the ditch and made a good go of it. I congratulate him where he's come from.
You can see that pride in his voice, knowing this is a New Zealand horse, or a New Zealand-owned horse.
He loved the opportunity.
You can see that real Kiwi-ness in him, and I think it's cool that he hasn't become all Sydney-ish with all the success.
And I think they were talking about Who Shot the Barman there yesterday, and whether this fella's going to be the replacement. I think he's quite looking forward to racing Patrick Erin right through to being a 10-year-old in the staying ranks in Australia. We've got the sprinters coming up, but let's go to the feature race on the card yesterday at Randwick. It was the $1 Million Epsom, and what a story this is. The man who's probably been in front of Hartnell more often than not, that we were talking about Chris Waller as the pinch hitter for Chris Waller, gets on the opposition in Hartnell and delivers.
Well, here he is coming wide in the blue, so this is in the Godolphin blue. You don't often see Huey Bowman riding, and the grey, DiGiardino, hits the lead for James McDonald, and I thought it was home here, but this is a remarkable story because Hartnell has tended to be a horse who Hugh Bowman has been the nemesis for. Obviously via Winks last year in the race we showed you before. Bonnevale won the Underwood, and that was always Hugh Bowman beating Hartnell. Here he is getting on Hartnell because he couldn't make the weight for Unforgotten, and he's done the job there, Hayden, and what a remarkable horse. Won over 2 miles in Wales as a 3-year-old, started favourite in the Melbourne Cup 2 years ago. Here he is winning the Epsom.
Very good training effort, very, very good. I mean, you're saying about Hugh Bowman being on Winks and beating Hartnell just beforehand. Well, Hartnell's run second to Hartnell
to Winks
4 times. Sorry, I'm getting too mixed up. Yeah, 4 times to run second to Winks. So for Huey to jump on Hartnell and win on yesterday, it's a big turnaround.
And the merry-go-round for jockeys, of course, J Mac rode Hartnell in the Melbourne Cup, but it was favourite for the Melbourne Cup, and here he is getting beaten by it yesterday. When that happens to you as a jockey, do you sort of go, oh, well, you're my old mate, Hartnell, I don't mind you beating me, or once you get off them, is it enemies?
Oh, it's enemies, but deep down you do feel that, it's nice to see that horse win. I mean, I know James would have been gutted that Hartnell, that he used to ride once beforehand, has beaten him in that top race, but I know that James would, because Hartnell's a crowd favourite, he would have loved that horse winning. Super
training performance by James Cummings, because he did mention at the beginning of the season, just when Hartnell got started, that he was deliberately going to keep him for the 1600 metre races, and that sort of the 1800 metres, the 2000 metre trips of the Cox Plate, etc., were just a bit too far for him, and he's basically pulled off the biggest mile race in the spring at Randwick yesterday. Well, Aussie's big banger sprinters were doing the rounds over the weekend with 2 warm-ups, if you like, for the Everest, and yesterday at Randwick, well, they were low-flying. Red Zell, the favourite for the Everest, the favourite for everything, probably the fastest horse in Australia, hit the turbos early on, and they broke 1.8 for the first time ever, they were saying yesterday at Randwick.
Yeah, track records in both the Epsom and in this race, of course, so breaking 1.8 for 1200 metres. Hard to know what to make of this form, because Red Zell, as we know, is the defending champion, and Trapeze Artist was here, so most of the favourites were here. But the Freedman horses really stood up. Santa Ana Lane and Shoals, in her time, who's had a stable change, obviously, recently with the controversy around her, also good. Trapeze Artist, the big, bold $50 million horse with the white blaze on the outside, I thought looked a touch one-paced, considering they had gone quick enough for the swoopers to get into the race. Shoals down the outside, very, very good. Santa Ana Lane looks the part, and Red Zell, you would have to say, even along with that speed, he was pretty disappointing. Here's the major lead-up to the Everest.
Santa Ana Lane goes home best. Wow, what a horse. Santa Ana Lane got up on the post a bit.
So maybe they just ran a wee bit too fast in front. A bit of a sort of table-turning race that yesterday, with the back runners getting up and Shoals and the eventual winner obviously just being a wee bit disappointing in the last couple of starts, toppling Red Zell and Trapeze Artist, the boom horses in terms of sprinters at Randwick yesterday. Of course, on Friday night at Moonee Valley, the sort of Victorian swathe was sort of having their crack at the Moya Stakes, and they're pretty fussy, these sprinters, aren't they? They obviously, we had Nature Strip, which was you know, potted as the fastest horse in Australia, and also bore the muscle there getting towards the front. But these horses too, as fast as they are, just had to work far too hard in that first 300 or 400 metres, didn't they? And then
he's pushing here, isn't he? Yeah. Nature Strip, and Aidan, we'll bring you in here. Like, he's really working here. When you're on one and you're working that hard, do you have the indication, okay, I've gone too quick here? Because you've got no choice, but do you know?
You do know. You do know on the first 200 or 300 metres when you've drawn wide and you've just got to push that little bit further to cross one other runner or get to the rail just to save a little bit of ground. You do know in the back of your mind that shit, am I going to get to the line?
They're a different breed, aren't they? Because this is only 1,000 metres and they're gone by home time, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, horses can run one breath on 800 metres, so if they've gone too hard early, they do need to take a breath somewhere along the way, and if they've gone so hard, they can't quite get to that line.
Now, Nature Strip was the ATC, so the host club's own horse for the Everest, and quite clearly he can't start on that. Darren Wheeler said, nope, so we're finished. One would suggest Theodora's going to slot into that spot. That would seem logical. So there's actually 2 slots now still vacant for the Everest. Brave Smash was very good there, and Huey said after the race, awfully hard to beat. That in itself was a good race, and it was fun to watch, but I don't mean to laugh about this. We had a conversation last week on the show where I said you would be mad to give your Everest nomination to Chautauqua. Well, Chautauqua agrees with me. Here's Chautauqua at the trials between races. He's the Graham Barrier 4 and... nah.
Hayden, horses are smarter than we think?
Definitely.
What's he thinking here?
He's thinking I've had enough.
So what's the difference between turning up at Moonee Valley on Friday night and doing this, and you know, jumping out relentlessly at you know, between races and what have you, with no crowd around? He just knows it's race time.
The horses do know, and like you said, he's turned up race day, the big crowd, the speakers are going. He knows where he is. He's had a situation beforehand that he's been frightened in. He don't want to jump out.
Frightened?
He doesn't appear to be sore, and obviously they would know if he was sore at his track work. Do you think, and as best you can play amateur psychiatrist about this, he just doesn't want to be there?
Yeah. Tommy Berry said yesterday that he knew around behind the gates that something wasn't quite right.
Have you been in that situation where you've been on a horse going to the gates and you thought, well, this isn't going to work, he doesn't want to be here?
Yeah, you can do. You can feel it. Many a time even on a long shot horse or a rough one, you'll get round to such a really nice prelim, you get round the gates, you get that gut feeling, I think this horse will go good today. Even though it's long in the odds and it's down in the book or might be on the ballot, you just get that feeling, oh, this horse feels something there that's going to go good, and they can come out and win. But also the other way around, you'll be on a favourite and it's playing up, it doesn't want to go on the gates, they're just doing niggly little things that you get the feeling, no, it's not on today.
Not jumping at all is quite neurotic, isn't it? I mean, he could just jump out and follow them around and not try.
If it was a one-off, fair enough, but he's become habit, and habits are hard to break with horses.
That brings into question the whip. Now, you obviously have one, and you are allowed to hit the horse behind the saddle with it. Would that just not work? Would he just be like, I'm not interested? Because does it not affect them enough that if you gave him a real belt behind the arse on that one, he would take off out of the gates? Because that would seem to be the thing.
No, it would work the opposite. A lot of majority of horses don't like the whip.
Yeah.
They will run from it, and there is a handful that need it, but there are more that don't. So I would say with that type of horse, the way he's acting, if you gave him one with a stick, he wouldn't like it.
I reckon that's the second worst one I've seen. You may not remember this, and I can't remember the horse's name. Remember Lance O'Sullivan went on the track for a Melbourne Cup once, and he got out onto the track, and then the horse just stood there.
Yeah.
And wouldn't move.
Yeah,
That's worse.
Pick this moment.
Yeah.
We've got some more greys coming up, but we thought we might go to this break with some of the greatest hits of what was truly a great sprinter.
Aero Velocity put his head in front from Painophobia. Strathmore, they're not listening to me. Lucky Bubbles. Chautauqua is winding up. Aero Velocity joined by Strathmore. Lucky Bubbles. Chautauqua still coming. Going to the lead, Lucky Bubbles. Chautauqua, here he comes. The Thunder down under. Chautauqua race to the lead. What a champion. Chautauqua beat Lucky Bubbles.
Stride for stride, fell swoop, Russian Revolution. English comes off heels, and the mare is starting to let down. English goes after fell swoop. Russian Revolution's running his race further back to Voodoo Lad. It's English and fell swoop fighting it out. Chautauqua very late. It's English a half length in front. Can he do it? Chautauqua, he's flying. Yes, there's history. Chautauqua makes it 3 in a row. That is unbelievable.
So that's Australia done. It was a great day in the big city yesterday. The track was in great order at Avondale, but did anyone actually go to the races to watch what was a fairly good day's even racing anyway? It wasn't the greatest card. That's the questions we've got to ask in terms of the New Zealand racing yesterday, which we'll get to shortly, but we're going to the New Plymouth races first, and the Greys race, which is, well, there were no Chautauquas, there were probably no Koiro Corrie Mays or Grey Ways, but they did put on a pretty good show at Taranaki.
I think it's a good look. I like the aesthetics of it, and I think it's good to have different types of race days. They tried a couple of different things yesterday. The winner here getting the tactical advantage by being on the outside, and bring you in here, Hayden. We see the winner, who's the grey, I hate to say that, out wide, and you see Mon Recur get back on the inside. As a jockey, when you're looking at a key rival, do you think to yourself, right, they're where they don't want to be, on where I want to be, it's time to move? Because you see the two of them there right alongside each other. This would appear to be the crucial part of the race. One can dictate its own line, the other has to wait.
Yeah, definitely. When you get to the summer racing like we're starting to come into now on the better tracks, tactical riding does come into a lot of play. So there's a very good ride here from Darryl, but in saying that, he was on probably the better horse of the day as well.
So this is what you call an armchair ride. This doesn't happen often on race day, does it? What, the trials?
Not a lot, but and still, you've still got to be able to ride and go when you need to, and knowing the horse helps with it too. Darryl had ridden it beforehand.
Yeah, look, Mon Recur coming through late here, but the winner, Stratocaster, won so well. Going it to the line, sits up. You get the feeling that that tactical advantage wasn't the key to the win. Basically, the winner was just too good.
Yeah, as you said, definitely too good.
Yesterday, a couple of unusual things there. A reverse ballot type race, and there was the Greys race had some controversy because one of the Greys wasn't grey and was scratched by the stewards. How does, I've got to ask you this, how does a non-grey registered horse end up in a Greys race? I'm not sure you know the answer to that.
No, I don't really, but if its colour looks like a grey horse, then I'm guessing the connections were thinking they can run in it. But unfortunately, registered with NZTR, it's registered as a 5-year-old bay mare. If you're a bay, you shouldn't be running in a grey race.
Well, Kerry Obbs had something to say about the grey that wasn't a grey in the Greys race and didn't end up starting in the end anyway.
It's quite funny, really, the Powerworks Greys. Last year we had to scratch one that was a roan, but didn't look like a roan, and this year we've had to scratch one that is a roan, and viewers will get a chance to see because it's doing an exhibition gallop today, but it's had to be scratched because it wasn't officially a roan. So I would have liked the RIU to check the horse out and make a decision on the morning if it's grey or not, but there were lawyers involved in that, and I'm throwing my hands up. Let the viewers have a look at it when it does its exhibition gallop, and hopefully Trackside will get a close-up of it, and they can make up their mind.
Well, it's got a white blaze and a couple of white feet and a few grey feet.
Okay, let's have a team vote. Who votes that horse is grey? Okay.
Didn't see enough.
There weren't a lot of votes for grey.
It was actually it's not an original concept, that grey race, but it was in the top 5 betting races in New Zealand on the day, and there was only 8 in it in the end. So.
There's a few flecks of grey there, but yeah, look,
I think it come down to its actual registration.
And so, in which case, how did it possibly even get nominated? I mean, that's like letting a male into a mare's race.
Yeah,
it's a boy.
So as I was saying earlier, but I was reading the wrong part of my script, it was a great day in the Big Smoke yesterday. The track was looking great at Avondale, but did anyone actually go and watch the races on the possibly to be closed Avondale racecourse out west? That's the telling shot, isn't it?
When you go to Avondale, I've been there a couple of times in the last couple of years for trials and races. The stand is just derelict. It's terrible. And if you could put a $20 million function centre, nice grandstand in there with that racetrack, which is really good, and race is pretty fair, as we saw yesterday from wins like Andoyas and those sort of things, you wouldn't consider closing it. But when you go there and when you take other people with you, they just go, what's wrong with this place? It's quite a horrible experience seeing a derelict grandstand there. And if people are paying serious money for horses to go there, it's a bit embarrassing. But the track itself
was beautiful yesterday.
Is fantastic. And that's the big problem. The Avondale question's not going to go away anytime soon. We'll discuss that later on. Here's the feature for the day over the 1,200 metres. Love Affair was scratched out of this and is supposedly heading to Hawke's Bay next week. Rich Billy Marsh, as she is wont to do, the grey, ironically, gets out in front here and sets up a nice speed, but I thought a very impressive winning performance. Wayne Hillis had a good day at the office, unleashed a smart 3-year-old earlier, but living on a prayer, Hayden is a long way back here, and you're thinking, look, is that too much? But when you expect the leader, as Rich Billy Marsh tends to do, to come back to you, that margin isn't actually as bad as it looks at this stage.
No, not really. On his day, Rich Billy Marsh can run a really bold race in front and hang on. On other days, he doesn't quite get there and he probably goes a little bit too fast in front. Today, I think, was the situation there where he's gone a little bit quick. It just really set it up for living on a prayer.
They went 1:09.92. It had all the form, the winner in the pink colours. Just on Rich Billy Marsh, just looking at the Stipes report, Jasmine Fawcett fined $600 for trying to weigh out without her stirrups. I think I know what that means, but what does that mean?
The word trying you just said, I don't know if that's the correct word to use or not. She may have just been a legitimate mistake and weighed out, forgetting that the irons are on there. Most jockeys leave their irons on the saddle. Some take them off to clean them, may have forgotten to put them back on. I don't know the situation.
It's a pretty good mare, that mare. She can stretch out to probably 1,600, one would think, at some stage, but she'll have plenty of options just around that. Maybe second tier, but she might turn up in a Concord type race. Raced very fair there yesterday. Yeah. I thought the bet of the day, and this was just bizarre. The betting drift was enormous for Bit Lippy. Now, this is a good horse. Now, you wouldn't have felt entirely comfortable early doors. It's the horse in the yellow who ends up 3 back on the inside momentarily because the favourite Nirvana in Fire crosses to the lead after a bit of a battle with the filly inside it. So they go pretty hard here. And then all of a sudden you're 3 back with Bit Lippy and you're like, oh, okay, that's not so comfortable. And maybe you're thinking, now I see the reason for the drift. $3 out to $4.20. But then the trailer comes outside the leader, Cameron gets up in behind it and has options to go inside or outside. Hayden, I think this is a pretty good horse. And I'm staggered by the drift. I'm thankful to the bookies for the 4.2. Fresh Up, this went to the line like a horse who's going to be a force at least as a place chance in a Guineas type race, I would have thought, pulling across heels here, and this was over once Cameron balanced it up.
Yeah, got the perfect dream run. You can see he was settled in the running and got to the line really well.
The one in the Go Racing colours run second here?
Did a good job too. Debutant from the Stephen
Marsh team. A lot of money
team
on this horse, the filly, what was it called?
Was actually favourite at one stage. But look at the winner. Another by Showcasing, absolutely bolts in, hadn't trialled leading into that. It's now $12 for the 2,000 guineas, which doesn't look as strong as the 1,000 guineas. That's a hell of a training performance from Wayne.
Yeah, very good. The leader, Nevada on Fire, I think just went too hard in front.
Lance O'Sullivan said it was unders in terms of its fitness, and it sort of over-raced, didn't it?
You could see Jason was really hanging on to the horse, so you could see he was just using too many carrots.
That's why the drift was so mysterious. Like I just couldn't see where that was coming. And I think our bookies sometimes work off the exchanges. They look at Betfair and they see the drift and they work off that. But that was mysterious because it was the best horse in the race, and it got out to $4.20. And as I said, I'm thankful I'm going on holiday today. I needed that.
So earlier in the day, a tonic for the Vance clan, and it will lead us into talking about Maya, who's got a share in the eventual winner of this third race, Born Dragon.
It's one thing you don't see very often is a horse who is this long in the market. And afterwards, or before the race, Brendan Popplewell was able to speak to Bob Vance, who said, look, it's very fast, and we're very happy with the horse, and they wanted to posse up close to the speed. It took a while to get there, and it was a bit of a muck around sort of ride from Sam because she got slow out of the gates and she had to keep pressing forward. But hey, this is pretty comprehensive because not a lot has gone right in this first 600. This horse just bolts him.
It does very well. As you said, not a lot went right early, and she's caught 3 deep early, had to keep sliding forward while the others are sitting pretty. I think at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in karma, and with what's gone on with Maya, this was a really fitting result.
Yeah, former Hong Kong galloper, and you would suggest on this Sheldon, look, it could turn up in a decent sprint. I know this is a rating 72, but it's got to get into decent races with a light weight, and clearly has a lot of speed.
It's some win actually, because it's sort of, you know, there to be bombed, but just keeps on kicking. And as you're saying, Hayden, sometimes it's just not all about form and odds. There's a wee bit of X factor involved, and that was the case yesterday with Born Dragon in race 3, of course, trained by the Vances and part-owned in that syndicate by Maya Vance. Which brings us, of course, to the situation with Maya Mick, which she'd been over in the Herald earlier in the week.
Yeah, look, terrible situation for Maya. She was riding in a hurdle race at Aroa Park in Rotorua on the 16th of September, and she was only riding in the hurdles to get her high weight licence so she could ride in the high weights over the summer. She was on Sensational. He actually tried to race a horse into the second last fence, and he just hit it flat knacker. Yeah. He just mistimed it, and he hit it hard, and the horse half landed on Maya. That gave her some spinal damage to the left side of her spine. Now, it's what's called incomplete damage. She had a huge operation. There's the photograph from the family of the operation, the scar at the stage of Maya's back. She almost cut her tongue off. She lost a bunch of teeth, punctured 2 lungs. It's pretty dramatic stuff. Now, the doctors haven't been able to confirm to Maya and Bob and Jenny that Maya will regain use of her leg. She can partially move her right leg, and Bob was telling me when you touch your left leg, she can feel it a little bit. So
that's got to be good,
which is good. Yep. Had a long talk to her this week on the phone, and what a brave young lady. Like, in that situation, I'll be pretty scared. And she's really pragmatic about it. She's been confident about the fact that she does have this challenge, but she's going to get over the top of this challenge. Obviously, we have another one of our leading female jockeys in Sarah McNabb, who's in hospital with some head injuries after a spill 2 days before this. I think it was at Woodville.
And you got a wee update,
to someone close to Sarah?
Yeah, I spoke to someone close to the family that she's out of hospital. She's at home.
Oh, good.
She's at home with her parents. Physically, her body's all good as gold. She's got a really, really bad bang to the brain, which will take, I mean, a lot of months. I'm guessing myself here it'd be 12 months on the sideline at least. But knowing her and being a jockey, she could be coming back earlier. I hope she doesn't come back earlier, but she needs to be 100%.
As a jockey, when you have a bad spill, is there any instantaneous liaison with NZTR? Does anybody ring, or is there a compensation in the weeks or months where you're recovering? Do we need something like that if there's not something like that?
I think there's more input that's probably needed. Straight away after the incident, or that I've had anyway myself, there's been a contact from NZTR. They offer you your first week's payment because ACC don't. If you've got private insurance, that helps a lot. But other than that, there's not a lot of contact with NZTR, no.
Okay, so just talking to Maya, she's like a lot of young people on social media these days. If you're on Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, but you can feel free to contact her. She's coherent, she's in bed, she's spending time in the hospital. It's boring being in hospital, so if you want to send her a best wishes, but best wishes from the team here at Trackside, from all of us, Maya, and to Sarah, of course, and we hope to see you back at the track before too long, both of you, and yeah, hoping for good things for them. And it's the icky part of the job, guys. We know it's reality, and it's not the part anybody enjoys talking about or seeing or anything like that. So here's hoping for good things for both of those young ladies.
Top jockeys and top horses had a spin around Ellerslie during the week. More on this later in episodes of Weigh In, but we got some shots. You were down there, Mick, and they spent $7 million on the drains and everyone pretty happy.
700,000. So
sorry,
that's 700,000. I'm not sure if 7 million was quite at the coffers there. I think you're spending Winston's money there. No, this was Monday morning. Track looked good, excellent. We'll talk next week on the show with Paul Wilcox, the chief executive. But they galloped from the inside to the outside of the track so they could test all areas of it. You can't see where the drains have gone in every 5 metres around the entire track. So an awful lot of drainage work. All the jocks were thrilled. And we'll hear from Paul in the coming weeks as Ellerslie counts down to a resumption. There's Tiaka Shark on the outside for Opie Bosson, Tiaka Shark and Opie Bosson back at Hastings next week. But yeah, first meeting back October 27 at Ellerslie, and they are all tickety-boo to go.
So last week, New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing's Bernard Saundry was in our weigh-in studio, and this week it's the tune of NZRB CEO John Allen to give us a version, I suppose, or not a version, but his views on where the New Zealand racing game is heading. Are you feeling like you're a wee bit of a, I don't know, out on a limb at the moment in terms of this discussion?
No, I don't think we're out on a limb at all. I think all of us are working extremely hard to drive better returns for owners, better returns for jockeys, get more money injected into this industry. All of us are looking to do that in a way that's sustainable for the long term. And the conversation that's going on at the moment is really just about what are the mechanisms by which you do that most effectively.
So are you still as enthusiastic and interested in the Masara report as you were, say, a month ago when you said that you were when it was immediately announced?
I'm really pleased that we've had an external perspective on our industry. I'm really pleased that we've had someone who's prepared to put some stakes in the ground and say this is the way forward. I think now we have to pick it up. We have to work out how we make it most effective for the New Zealand context, and we have to work through the detail of implementation so that it can actually deliver long-term for all of us.
Submissions are being made to the Minister via the DIA by October 19th. John, what is the NZRB's key points in your submission about the Masara report and the strategic future of racing?
So our key points are we do need more money, and we greatly support race fields and the abolition of the gambling duty so that we can inject more money into the sport. We do need investment in racing infrastructure, and so we strongly support the 3 synthetic track investment opportunity that Mr Masara has advocated. We do think we've got too much racing infrastructure in New Zealand. We simply don't have the money to bring it all up to standard, and Mr Masara has offered a view on that. Our perspective on that is that the clubs of New Zealand have to get involved in that conversation actively. The clubs in New Zealand and the codes have to own the solution. And that, of course, was the process that we've been working through with the clubs and codes over the last year. And then lastly, and then you come back in, but lastly, we do think that the option of outsourcing the TAB needs to be very carefully thought through. because the TAB is a significant asset for our industry. It's a valuable asset for our industry, and if we're going to give it away, we're going to have to, or give away control of it, then we've got to make sure that we're getting a very significant dividend above what the TAB could itself deliver.
The Minister said at the Harness Racing New Zealand conference on Friday that the racefields legislation has been dropped. That bill will not be going to Parliament, it won't be tabled, and therefore it won't be voted on. You were surprised by that. I think he indicated he wasn't happy with it, it wasn't fit for purpose, was his words. Is there no communication, being perfectly honest, between yourself and the Minister for Racing, because he hadn't told you that in advance?
No, well, I don't know that he'd told anyone in advance of that particular decision, and perhaps he couldn't because of parliamentary process, I'm not sure. But the reason that I was concerned and remain concerned about that is because we need the money. The clubs need the money, and we need it now, and everybody supports this legislation, all the codes. You know, we're all lined up on it. Parliamentary support, the majority of parties across Parliament support the legislation. Mr Massara himself supported the legislation and said it's a key component of taking things forward.
So John, what's the problem? Why can't we have this passed and then start working towards the future? Because we need the money, and it's our money, and we should be getting it, but we're not going to get it.
So I think that's exactly what should happen. I think we should have had this passed.
Well, then, John, I don't understand this, and I'm not blaming you and I'm not blaming the Minister, because he is a very busy man. He is the Deputy Prime Minister of the country. Can you not ring Winston Peters and ask these questions? Has your relationship not been established at that level? Is there a breakdown in communication? Because you're in charge of New Zealand racing and he's the Minister for Racing, but you guys don't seem to talk very often.
Well, as you've said, I mean, he is extraordinarily busy. He's off a multitude of portfolios. He's got to lead his party in what is a reasonably complex coalition. But the answer to your question, do we talk? No, we don't.
So, for me, as a stakeholder and as a person who owns racehorses, that's not good enough. Like, the fact that you're the boss of New Zealand racing and you're not talking, and I'm not saying it's your fault or his fault. I know the Minister is very busy, but at this most crucial time in the history of New Zealand racing, I want the person who's in charge of it, which is still you, and the person who's guiding its destiny, which is Mr Peters, talking to each other. How is this possible that you can't sit down like Sheldon and I do here, or you and Sheldon now, and discuss what involves hundreds of millions of dollars?
Which goes back to my original question, how do you not feel like you're out on a limb here?
Well, I don't feel I'm out on a limb here, because what I'm saying is largely what the codes are all saying. I mean, we've worked together on the venue review, we've worked together on looking at options for outsourcing the TAB. There's significant work that is going on right now.
But do you feel like you're not going to get a say in this at all?
Oh, no, the Minister's said that we'll all get a say. The Minister's said, as was indicated, that we can make submissions. We will be making a submission. And I think that as I say, there is a high degree of alignment across the industry about how we move forward.
This is interesting, John. You mentioned submissions, and people out there have probably made their own submissions, clubs and organisations. Who's going to read all of these documents? Like, a number off the top of my head, there must be at least 100 of them. I know 20 people who have made submissions, and you guys are making obviously a significant one. But the Minister is not going to read these. Obviously, he's a very busy man. I respect that. They're going to the DIA, who are going to, I take it, read all these submissions, and, excuse my ignorance, do they then filter a report through to the Minister on what they think should happen? And to be perfectly honest, is the Department of Internal Affairs the right people to be making judgments on the future of New Zealand racing?
Well, the Department of Internal Affairs is the agency of government that supports the Minister for Racing in his racing portfolio.
Okay, are you confident they can make these decisions? Because I'm not.
Well, I don't know that they will make decisions. What they will do is they will review the material, they'll assemble the material, and as you say, they'll report to the Minister. Ultimately, the Minister will make the decisions about which pieces of the feedback he accepts, which pieces of the feedback he doesn't. I'm sure that he will carefully consider that feedback. He has indicated he will, and I think it's really important because if people feel that their feedback's been listened to and been taken into account, then they're going to be much more willing to own and support the outcomes.
It feels like that it's the minister that's going to make this decision at the end of the day.
Well,
the consultation and the to and fro is just piecemeal.
No, ultimately the minister will make the decision. I don't know that the process is piecemeal. I think that the minister has specifically asked us all to provide feedback. I think it is really important that everybody does provide feedback. I think it's critically important that issues such as outsourcing the TAB, as venues, and particularly the suggestion that the ownership of those venues might flow in some way to the ownership of assets, or the proceeds of assets might flow directly to codes under statute. Those sorts of issues are addressed by the racing community in New Zealand.
So you can probably view this a wee bit from a yard back because you haven't been involved in New Zealand racing for a hell of a long time compared to perhaps us. How does New Zealand racing look in 10 years in a perfect world if we take how much of the Masara report on board in your eyes, viewing it from where you are now and perhaps from where you will be in the future, which won't be part of it?
Well, I think there's two pieces of it. One, I think that the TAB will continue to improve its profitability. I think there is huge opportunity to grow the profitability of the TAB. And even if you just look at our SOI, our current SOI, we're looking to move from what will be a significant increase in profitability in the year just finished at an operating profit level to about $158 million. To $175.3 million in this season, to $200 million to $220 million. So that's the trajectory that the TAB currently has in front of us. So I think there's heaps of opportunity to increase the profitability of the TAB. I think there is lots of potential to do even more if we're able to get the benefit of the gambling duty abolition, if we're able to get race fields in place. You know, this is an industry that needs an injection of money. We know where that money can come from. We just need to get our hands on it.
John, I asked Bernard Saunger in the show last week, because we're talking about separation of the codes and separation of funding to the codes, what NZTR has done in the last decade to suggest it would wisely spend our money, because it's our money as stakeholders. Yeah. I want to ask you the same question. Has the New Zealand Racing Board's performance in the last decade been good enough to suggest they're the best people to spend our money?
Well, I can only talk about the last 3 years, which is the period that I've been actively involved.
But you must have seen the numbers for the last decade.
Yeah, I have.
Has it been good enough?
Well, not if you look at a decade level, probably. But what I'd say to you is in the last 3 years, I'm very confident that we have been good stewards of the assets of the TAB. We have grown those assets. We have invested for the long-term future. So if you just look at things, we've got high-definition OB vans being sent out around the country right now so that our product is presented on the world stage in the best possible way. We've grown customer numbers in the last year by 18%, which sounds modest, I suppose, to some, but is a huge achievement and gives validity to our view that there's real potential to get more Kiwis punting on our products if we present it right. And we've grown our profitability over the last 3 years. We're on the cusp of launching our fixed odds betting platform, which will revolutionise betting for Kiwi punters. So yes, I think we are good stewards.
So why, if what you're telling me is true, and I don't think you're lying to me, why is there so much angst, anger, and at some levels hatred of the racing board, or is it of the entire racing administrative machine? Because some people say it's your guys' fault, and some people say it's NZTR's fault, and in harness racing they blame their own administrative bodies. Why is there this drive to get rid of the racing board in your mind if you are happy with the way it's performing?
Well, I think there's some history here. Not all of it which I know. So when I talk to people about that and those sorts of attitudes, they tend to reach a long way back into history to start validating and justifying their position. The second thing is I think people forget that the racing board is not a group of sort of suit-wearing people living in Wellington in offices that are distant from racing. The racing board is actually the people in your TABs. It's the people on course supporting the clubs to get their jolly wiring and their TVs going. It's the people on course taking the pictures that enable our product to be sold around the world. So somehow we've got to reconnect the realities of what the racing board is and what the racing board does with the industry. And I don't think we've been very good at that.
Isn't the reality, though, isn't the reality we've actually got to reconnect people with horse racing in New Zealand?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, this is a very important economic question. The basic argument around outsourcing comes down to scale and the fact that the Australian TAB, who would seem to be the natural partner for us to get into bed with, have a bigger machine, they can use more scale, blah, blah, blah. We won't need a fixed odds betting program. It's very complicated stuff. Economically, do you buy into that? And if it is true, because you're not a lifer, we're lifers in racing, we've done it our entire lives, and you're a guy who can move on to be CEO of something else. If it's true, isn't it time we let it happen? Or do you believe it's not true, one way or the other? Because the problem is, John, the people who potentially have the opportunity to vote on contracts or looking into contract negotiations could be voting themselves out of a job.
Yeah. So look, the debate about scale is a legitimate debate. The way in which you achieve scale, though, there are plenty of options. So one way is to do the sort of licensing agreement that is being talked about, the outsourcing agreement that is being talked about. Another way, which is the way that we've been operating over the last few years, is to say we'll pick partners that are best in class to partner with for particular types of parts of our business, and we'll achieve scale in that way. The potential benefit of one over the other is simply that we keep control of the asset that is the TAB under the approach we're taking, and we don't keep control of the asset which is the TAB under the approach which is otherwise being taken.
I'm not going to argue that with you. I agree the asset should stay in New Zealand, but are we lacking in performance? Have we let the industry down? Because, John, a lot of people feel let down. Or is there misinformation? I heard the Minister say that racing lost $200 million, which is, I don't believe to be true. Is there a bit of misinformation out there about the actual numbers?
Oh, well, I've also heard around the traps the $200 million loss figure, which is absolutely not true. I've heard that we've borrowed $200 million or we're $200 million in debt, which is absolutely not true. The question, I absolutely accept that we need to be able to make more money. And I'm perfectly happy to look at outsourcing, so don't misunderstand these comments. All I'm saying is to make, for a decision to be made to move ahead with an outsourcing transaction, you have to be really confident that that transaction is going to deliver a substantially greater dividend to the industry in the long term than the current TAB and its plans could deliver for it, because you're giving up control and because you're relying on a partner to continue to prioritise in the long term New Zealand racing over whatever other racing they're also going to be responsible for.
You talk about confidence, and a lot of people watching the show have mortgages and are pouring money into horse racing, and if this is a stuff up, they're going to lose their house or lose their job. When I hear about the Typhoon betting system, which cost us $20 million, and this is before your time, sure, and we didn't turn the machine on, sure, and we have a fixed odds betting platform program now which is behind schedule, yeah, how can I have any confidence that the racing board's the right people to look after my money if there had been mistakes of this magnitude in the last decade?
Well, because the partners that we've chosen to work with are amongst the best in the world. So OpenBet is a technology provider to virtually all of the major betting businesses.
Why is the fixed odds betting program behind schedule?
Because it's a large, complex project, and it's taken longer than anticipated to implement that program. It's not ideal, I get that, but look, the partners we've chosen are great partners. They're working incredibly hard, as are our team, to deliver this project. I'm confident we will deliver the project. I'm confident it will be a significant enhancement.
So you're confident you deliver it by when?
Well, the date that we're working to at the moment is the 5th of December. That we've talked about that publicly. I'd never say you can't get bumps in the night in these sorts of projects, but that's what we're working to. That's what the team are focused on, and we've got people in London, we've got people here, we've got people in Greece, because OpenBet have European networks working to deliver this for the benefit of Kiwi punters and the New Zealand racing industry.
John, take yourself out of this equation. Say you're the CEO of Fonterra, or whatever. So, and you're looking at this externally at this place, this racing board thing. Are the people and the business structures inside the racing board smart enough to lead us into this brave new world over the next 5 years with unbundling of television rights, outsourcing? Have we got the right people to do that? Because if we haven't, shouldn't those people stand aside? What's your honest opinion if you were looking at this externally?
My honest opinion is that the people that we have in the racing board at the moment, and I'm talking particularly about my team and the people who work with me across the racing board, are amongst the best possible people you could have in any industry across New Zealand. I think they are absolutely the equal of other corporate teams that I have led. I think absolutely they have the passion and the commitment and the drive to deliver for New Zealand. That doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes from time to time. I think that within the codes, I've seen huge commitment. People have worked really hard and very collaboratively. We work together, despite the narrative out there that we don't. So, look, I think we've got the people in the industry to make this happen. I've just come out of the harness conference, and looking at the passion and the people and the clubs of the harness code, for example. I mean, we've got great people in the industry. It's not a problem with the people. It's a problem of getting a focus, deciding precisely what we're going to do and getting on and doing it.
John, thank you. Thank you to Hayden Tinsley. Sheldon, you're on your own next week, buddy. I'm off to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris.
Excellent. And if you want to put in your own submission, that address is racingreview@dia.govt.nz. They've got hundreds already, but the more the merrier. Next week on Weigh In, we'll be covering off the last leg of the Hastings Triple Crown. Will it be a dance in the park, or maybe some Southern spoils? We'll know this time next week on Weigh In.